it anyway.
Oh, there we go.
So there you go. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So I'm Dave Will from Avaya. I'll talk you through the Avaya Wireless LAN 9100, why we think it's the right choice, how you can sell and position it effectively, and I'll drop into the presentation what are some points around why it's the right solution for particularly for UC applications, although plainly not exclusively. So quick agenda overview. I'll talk about market trends in the landscape and what's happening in wireless LAN. Apologies if these are things you already know, but I think it's relevant for this discussion. I'll then talk about the Wireless LAN 9100, review of the portfolio and bring out some of the benefits. I'll touch on identity engines and the Avaya Fabric as well, because we see those as key components to complement our wireless LAN solution. And then I was going to touch on some customer success stories, including one that's particularly exciting, which I'll use to kind of close up my piece. So just some facts around what's happening, a did you know kind of thing. So lots of enterprises are allowing employees to bring their own devices to work and use their own devices, in fact positively encouraging it for potential cost savings that it can deliver. But of course that puts strain and extra demands on wireless LAN infrastructure. There's a massive growth in wireless LAN devices. I think we can all see that this is both users that personal devices and what you might refer to the Internet of Things type devices that actually aren't belonging to or operated directly by a person. Most businesses are planning to increase Wi-Fi capacity. This goes for schools, government, enterprise, small business, pretty much across the whole range. Wi-Fi capacity is looking to increase. So there's certainly a big growth opportunity there, and that's partly driven by the technology and partly driven by user expectation and demand. Many people are citing Wi-Fi as the most important amenity in a hotel. I think that's true of hotels and various other facilities as well, conference centres, for example. But many people regard Wi-Fi plainly as table stakes. I know if I turn up at a hotel and make me pay for Wi-Fi, it's possibly one of the most frustrating hotel experiences that I come up against. We're also seeing a massive growth in Wi-Fi around sports facilities and stadiums and sports clubs. I've personally been doing a lot of work in that space. We're seeing a lot of demand for it for various reasons, partly for spectator experience, partly for revenue generation, but there's various reasons why that's a big growth market, so I encourage you to go looking for those environments to sell into. And kind of associated with all of this, we see that many open Wi-Fi networks are susceptible to abuse from various sources, both internal and external, some bordering on legitimate, some downright plain abuse. So there's a lot of threats around security that need to be addressed, and we have solutions to address those as well. So it's kind of a bit of background on the market with wireless LAN. In terms of the technology, the kind of next big thing that's going to happen is the 802.11ac Wave 2 products, which are just about to hit the market. We're pretty well placed to deliver those towards the end of this year, early part of next year, and that's going to really ramp up the speed of wireless LAN environments, providing the ability to do lots and lots of throughput with them, really directly taking on what the wired network could deliver in terms of performance. It will, of course, have an impact on the wired network because it's going to put extra strain on it, and it's likely to drive a refresh in wired infrastructure as well, because these new APs need a couple of things. They potentially need more power over Ethernet, and they potentially need higher speed than gigabit wired connections to connect them into the wired network as well. So although we're not selling it immediately today, it's something to keep your eye on and talk to your customers about and make them aware of that change that's coming so they can get prepared for it. And it's a big sales opportunity because of that performance input and the requirement that it will have to refresh both wireless and wired infrastructure. So really bear that one in mind and consider that something that you talk to your customers about. Security, I've touched on this as well, so I won't dwell on this too much longer. But just bear in mind that there are a lot of issues around security that people need to take into account. And security means not just malicious activity; it means abuse or misuse of infrastructure as well. So we have technology to enable you to make sure that you can enforce and police the correct use of corporate wireless LAN infrastructure to make sure it's being used for business purposes and not for other areas of abuse. And furthermore, we can use our technology to segment the network such that you can securely segment a guest environment for wireless LAN from a business environment for wireless LAN and a business wired environment, for example, as well. So These are some of the things that we can do with the Fabric and Identity Engine story. So it can make this wireless LAN very much more secure. That grows your sales opportunity from a simple UC deal to a wireless deal to then potentially delivering a complete wired and wireless refresh for an organisation. So there's a massive opportunity there to capitalise on that issue. So to summarise the challenges, applications are unpredictable. There's many applications out there. I mean, virtually every user today has a smartphone. Every user has a smartphone with applications on it. Most users have an application of a smartphone with applications that are not governed by the business themselves on them as well. So you see a lot of that kind of application traffic, and that can lead to misuse, sometimes unknowingly, but that's something that we need to control. There's also lots of devices out there. Most users have more than one device now. Many have more than two. Some even have 3 or 4. So there's a lot of devices out there to be taken into account. There are various different types, and having the flexibility and the control to deliver services to all of those is a key capability. The spectrum is getting increasingly congested as well. So because there's more devices, more wireless LAN devices, more wireless LAN use, being able to effectively manage the available wireless LAN spectrum, which is a finite commodity, it has to be said, is something which the wireless LAN infrastructure needs to be able to do. And it can be complex to plan and deploy your wireless LAN environment. It's a good sales opportunity for you to pick up wireless LAN skills and use those to consult, engineer and design wireless LAN solutions. So there's a good opportunity for you there to do that, and we have some of the tools to help with that as well. So that's a summary of what we see as the primary challenges around wireless LAN delivery and deployment. So just a high-level view, and I'll delve into more detail on some of these things, but what if we could give you the ability to prioritize those applications that matter to the business the most and to downplay the ones that don't? And there's a kind of some examples given on the illustration top left-hand corner there, but they're not always the same for every business. For some businesses, YouTube will be mission critical. For others, it'll be a pain. So we have to have the flexibility to be able to give network administrators control over that. What about if we could embrace a bring your own device solution in a controlled manner, so we can effectively take in business partners, guests, employees, Internet of Things type devices into our network environment and use a bring your own device network access control solution to support and deliver all of those. And what if we could optimize our wireless environment to our users? I'll talk more about some specific features we have to do this, but wireless LAN, frankly, can go badly wrong. You need to have the technology and the skills to deploy it effectively, and we have ways to do that. So imagine being able to optimize that to give the best possible performance all of the time. And what if we could give you a future-proof story as well, the ability to invest in wireless LAN with the right technology at the right time, and then to increase that investment appropriately as and when those additional capabilities and functions are required, ideally without the need to send engineers to site to do that. So those are some of the things that we can do to make our wireless LAN story more powerful. So what's the Avaya difference for enterprise mobility look like? So first of all, we have an application optimization solution, the ability to optimize which applications get treated in which way. We've got a very strong bring your own device solution, which includes a guest access capability to enable you to empower relatively unskilled non-IT staff to service and to handle guest access. We've got a story around technician-free end-to-AC, so you can buy, if you like, previous generation wireless LAN and upgrade it to latest generation with a simple software upgrade rather than an engineer visit. We have software programmable radios. I'll talk a bit more about how that's powerful. Coupled to that, we have various features around RF optimization. We're delivering a very strong story around operational simplicity. How can you make it easy to add more infrastructure and take infrastructure away or make it mobile without adding extensive overhead to the IT operation of an organization? We've got a strong story around intuitive management. I'll talk about that as well. Distributed controller architecture is the one that we promote. Many of our competitors don't, but frankly, those solutions shouldn't be a major threat to us competitively, but I'll talk about the benefits of distributed controller. And we have a story now around both cloud and premise-based management to suit customers that want a choice in that area. So those are there's a summary of the benefits that we offer. So first of all, application optimization or application control is a key benefit of ours. I'm hoping this animation has come through on the slide where, okay, I tested it as best I could before the presentation. But the point I'm making here is that directly within the wireless access point itself, we have the ability to identify which applications are being used and then treat those applications in the appropriate manner. So we can prioritize, block, permit, we can do things based upon time of day, we can take various different courses of action depending on which applications are being used. And this is possible because we have a dual-core processor within every AP. We can dedicate a core for this function, so we can do this without impacting on performance of the AP in terms of traffic forwarding. And we have a very extensive database. It's running at over 1,300 applications that are included in this database that we're able to simply enable this function and then look at which applications are being used. Now, in its simplest form, we can use that to report on how the network is being used. And then we can go into a bit more, we can apply a little bit more power and control, and then change the QoS settings on those applications. We can block some if we choose to. We can do that based upon time of day. There's various different things that we can do that. So this is critical for a UC application or a UC environment because you really don't want background data traffic, file transfers, etc., non-real-time traffic to be impacting on your UC applications. So one of the things that we've done recently is to enable an application control signature within the AP to identify Avaya Scopia traffic and to prioritize that as high priority. Typically, there's probably not much other course of action you do with that, but we can prioritize that Scopia traffic as high priority. So it's a very powerful capability to optimize our wireless LAN infrastructure specifically to handle UC applications. But there's various other things we can do. I was with a customer owner yesterday who wanted to block iCloud and Google Cloud, which is generally good practice for an enterprise wireless LAN, because what we find is that people bring personal devices to the office, they use them at the weekend to capture lots of video, they go into the office on the weekend and on a Monday morning, and those devices are configured to automatically upload to iTunes or Google Cloud when they see a wireless network, and you get lots of background traffic of simple cloud-based backup and storage of those applications. So being able to block those at source is a very powerful thing to make sure that we optimize the available bandwidth both on the wireless and the corporate WAN, corporate internet link, for business applications. The other function we can turn this to is for education, where we've seen use of this to enable time of day based blocking of certain applications. So you may want students to get access to Facebook at the after school club, but you may want to block it during the working day when it's not seen as productive to their learning. So there's various things you can do to optimize the wireless LAN environment to suit what's happening at certain times of day in different business environments. So if I was to pick one feature that we can sell on, this would probably be it. It's got a very strong UC story, as you can tell. So bear this in mind as something that we can regard as a very high strength feature of our solution. The next area I wanted to focus on was RF optimizations. How can we maximize on that already stated finite commodity of wireless spectrum and RF capacity to deliver the most service to our users? So first of all, we have a thing called roaming assist. We can force users to roam effectively by forcing them to go from one AP to another. So in a UC environment, this is absolutely critical. If you imagine a user on a mobile device, you want them to have the strongest mobile signal at all times. You don't want them to be walking across their building or across a warehouse and get stuck associated with an AP, which is becoming an increasingly long distance from them and their signal is dropping. You want to be able to force them to disconnect from that AP and to connect to one that's going to give them a much better service. So that sounds straightforward. Not every vendor has it. Roaming Assist is the feature that we have to enable to force them to do that. We also have a feature called Bonjour support to optimize how we handle Apple devices. Apple is generally recognized as being one of the most taxing device communities for a wireless LAN environment, and our Bonjour capability can handle that very, very well. We then have the ability to identify what devices are and also what users are and associate them in the right way. So we can treat users in a different way depending upon what that device is. We can apply a different group policy to them, so the application control may be different for one group to a different group. So we have the flexibility to control that and therefore optimize what services the wireless LAN gives to each user. We then have a couple of features around being able to automatically control the power and the channel. So I've talked about wireless spectrum being a finite resource. allocating channels effectively to make use of the available spectrum is a very important capability of wireless. So our auto channel function can automatically enable a number of APs to select and pick channels that don't overlap, therefore optimizing the use of the available spectrum. Absolutely critical if you look at something like a high density environment where you need to put lots of users in a very small space, therefore you're trying to put more users in the same RF spectrum capacity, and auto channel can give you a strong story around managing that. And then the next feature is, I've touched on there, is this concept of band steering and load balancing, where we can direct users to the most appropriate spectrum for them, or most effective radio and spectrum for them to use. So for example, we might want to reserve our 5 gigahertz spectrum for the latest 11AC standard, and therefore drop N clients onto 2.4 gig, for example, when they don't impact on the throughput of our 5 gig devices. So we can steer and direct devices to the most appropriate radio and most appropriate RF spectrum for them to use to maximize the capacity that we have in our RF environment. So pretty bold statement at the top of this slide, up to 70% more bandwidth than competitive offerings. So how do we achieve this? A number of ways in which we do it. The most significant one is having the ability to software control our radios. So I've already talked a little bit about 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radios. I'm hoping you're already aware of the fact that there are two different spectrums in use with Wi-Fi today, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. 5 gigahertz is the most modern, has some considerations around how it's deployed, but it's the more up-to-date and more modern standard. However, there are a lot of devices that don't support 5 gigahertz today, particularly in the kind of legacy environment in warehousing and retail and that kind of space. So you may well find you have an environment today where you need to support both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, and therefore we have two radios in majority of our APs, at least two radios in all of our APs, I should say. So we can have a 2.4 and a 5 gigahertz radio operating simultaneously. However, in the future, we may choose to switch off the 2.4 gigahertz because we don't have any clients that still need that. We can therefore have two 5 gigahertz radios operating on different channels, therefore giving us more capacity in the 5 gigahertz spectrum with the higher bit rate standards such as 802.11c, and therefore we give ourselves more capacity from that available wireless environment. So we have the ability to software configure and software define that. Not every vendor has that, and that's a key differentiator for us because it means we can give a very strong future-proofing story and not have to throw APs away to replace them with a dual 5 gigahertz radio in the future. And you can deploy that like that day one if you choose to. What we generally find is that no two wireless environments are the same, so having this flexibility is a very strong thing to enable you to sell on both as a current today capability and as a future-proofing story for future flexibility as well.
Dave, yes, you used to mention things like this. One of the things, so Clay, you're going to speak Valley and run through it tomorrow. So when you're flying tomorrow, what time do you land? So when do we get some material out to the group?
I'm really sorry. I couldn't hear your question. Did that come through loud and clear to anyone?
Sorry, I don't know if that was just some background noise there. I think it's gone away now.
It sounded like a question, but I couldn't hear it, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, could you pop it in the chat window and maybe I can answer it via that means?
We've got nothing here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if you want to carry on, I can...
I beg your pardon, I'll keep going, but if you want to drop the question into the chat window later or drop an email across, I'll answer it that way if that's okay, but apologies for that. So another strength of the portfolio is the fact we have a distributed architecture. So distributed architecture means that the access point itself deals with the traffic forwarding. There's no need to have a centralized controller-based architecture to do that. Some vendors are still promoting and selling on that solution. Frankly, that's a very old-fashioned way of doing it. It doesn't have scalability for today's wireless standards, let alone the future much higher bitrate wireless LAN that's coming with 11AC Wave 2, for example. So having a distributed architecture really is the way to go. It gives you lots of benefits for UC in particular because a lot of UC traffic is peer-to-peer in its nature and you really don't want UC traffic to be having to tandem via a data center to get from one user to another user that may be sitting very close to each other. So distributed architecture is absolutely critical for UC because it enables that concept of peer-to-peer communication to be delivered in the most effective fashion. It also gives you much higher scalability, so it really is absolutely critical if you look at an environment such as a sports ground or a sports stadium, where you want to have lots of capacity in a high density environment. You really need that distributed architecture type concept to support that. So this is delivered by basically having the forwarding engine resident within the AP, and as I said earlier when I talked about application control, that function also is delivered at the AP itself. With this architecture, we add more performance as we add more APs. We're not having to run through a performance bottleneck with a controller, so the more APs we add, the more performance we deliver into our wireless environment. So it's very much a kind of scale as you buy type model, where the more APs you add, the more performance, the more throughput, the more capacity you deliver. However, none of this is of any value at all unless you can control it centrally. So we have a very strong centralized management solution to enable the administrator to control all of these APs centrally, to build profiles for different APs, to configure, say, a group in a warehouse to operate differently from a group that's in the office environment. And this can all be managed via a central tool that gives you a single policy management point for configuration and monitoring and troubleshooting and reporting on all of those access points. So very strong architecture. If customers are demanding 802.11 AC, they really have to have this solution. There really isn't any other way of doing it practically. So if customers are demanding 11 AC, as I suspect you'll hear when you go to your customers in the field, then this is really the way in which they need to do that. So looking at potentially slightly larger solutions now, traditional networks can be very, very complicated. And overlaying wireless on that simply makes that task more taxing. If you want to have, for example, a layer 2 roaming connection between two APs, you may need to extend a VLAN between those two access points themselves. So it can get quite complex and quite cumbersome to roll out wireless LAN over a traditional wired network environment built using traditional networking protocols and methods. So what Avaya would promote is the Fabric Connect solution, which gives us a very simple core architecture. We've removed literally 25 years of superfluous protocol and replaced it with one in the form of our Fabric Connect solution. So this gives us an ideal platform on which to build wireless LAN capability, because it means we can easily separate and segment wireless guest traffic from UC traffic, from corporate applications, and from business process applications such as security and that kind of door entry stations, that kind of thing as well. So Fabric Connect is an ideal platform on which to build a wired infrastructure. It also means we can have an edge-only configuration concept, where if we want to add a new service or change a service, we literally configure the edge. We don't have to replicate that configuration across all of our core nodes or core switches in our network. It's also very strong, very highly resilient. It's very simple to manage because it's a single protocol and can save the network administrator a lot of time. So what we've done with our wireless solution is introduce a concept called Fabric Attach. So Fabric Attach literally means that you plug an AP into an access switch. The AP is automatically authenticated and recognized as an Avaya AP. The configuration that it's required is automatically pushed to it, and furthermore, the configuration on the access switch itself is automatically defined to suit the fact that it has an AP connected into it. So the appropriate VLANs and the correct virtual networks are set up on that port to support all of that required connectivity. And this can be done in a very automatic way without any intervention from the network administrator. So it means APs can be rolled out very simply. There's no need for extensive configuration to be applied every time an AP is moved or reconfigured or added to the network. So it makes it very straightforward to connect up and build out a wireless LAN environment. Furthermore, we can extend this capability to support wireless users as well. So as soon as a user joins the network, that user is automatically placed into the right virtual network and given the right connectivity as well. So it makes it very simple to both add the APs and to authenticate and add users and devices into the network as well. So it's very much an Avaya unique, and it's delivered by having the combination of the Avaya Fabric, identity engines, and the Avaya wireless LAN solution. So we talked a lot about the systems that we have to deliver this. I just wanted to touch on the fact that we have a very wide range of access points, as you can see here. So there's both indoor and outdoor options. We have a very strong feature set across all of those, so that they all feature the integrated controller. They all have application control built into them, or the option application control to be licensed on them, I should say. They all feature this concept of the zero-touch provisioning, and they all have on-premise and in the very near future a cloud management solution as well. So there's a very wide range of features across all of these APs. We then have a combination of 2x2 and 3x3 MIMO APs, so depending on how much performance you're looking to get from your wireless environment dictates whether you want the 2x2 or the 3x3 environment. All of them have at least 2 radios. The higher end model, the 9172 and 9173, actually have 4 radios, so therefore giving you a higher density option as well if need be. All of the indoor models are AC capable, so they can be purchased as N but upgraded to 11 AC if required, or purchased straight off with 11 AC support. There's a very strong feature set, as I say, across all of those access points. So it's a very wide range of APs. Apologies, is anyone posting in the chat window? Because I'm not able to see it terribly well with the presentation I've put up. Matt, could you replay any questions on that are coming in on the chat window for me?
We just had one now from Lewis asking what's the difference between 2x2 and 3x3. Oh,
okay, I see. So there's a technology called MIMO. So to be honest, I'm probably not expert in the finer details of wireless to give you a good explanation, and it would take a little while to do. But if you Google MIMO, you'll get some good explanations of what this means. It basically, but in essence, it means the number of spatial streams that are supported by the radio itself. So the more powerful APs are basically able to have more simultaneous streams running across more antenna. So the 3x3 has basically 3 antenna and 3 spatial streams. The 2x2 has 2 antenna and 2 spatial streams. So 3x3 will give you more throughput and more capacity. So it's particularly relevant for higher capacity users, such as the media, for example, where they might want to have very high-end workstations to take advantage of that. But probably less so for mobile UC. You'll find the 3x3 is more relevant when you have very high-end devices. So if they're married up with a 3x3 capable end station or workstation, and that's generally only a high-end laptop, maybe a high-end tablet, maybe a very high-end smartphone, then you'll be able to take advantage of that. Otherwise, that'll be a less relevant capability. So 3x3 think high performance, 2x2 think lower performance, and like I say, it's to do with MIMO, which I'd encourage you to, if you're interested, to have a Google on that, and you'll get some more detailed information around what that actually means and does. Okay, so in terms of management, this is a screenshot from our management solution. It's called WAS, the Wireless Orchestration System. That's able to give you, and I've touched on some of these points already, but I'll just recap some of these. It gives you a solution to be able to centrally configure equipment. You can define profiles for groups of APs to basically build a profile. New version configuration AP gets added to the network, you assign the profile to it, so you're able to do that kind of thing. You can have different profiles configured for different environments, so you might have one for outdoor APs, one for indoor, you might have one for the warehouse, and one for an office environment, for example. You might have one for branch office and one for corporate, so you can do those kind of things with it as well. You can also get a very simple to view, both graphical and textual based, around number of users connected, which applications are in use, when your peak busy periods were, that kind of thing. You can export these reports, so you might want to choose to export reports around which applications have been used and when your busy periods have been, and you can use it for troubleshooting as well, to identify where you might have issues. It gives you a very simple to view feedback on whether access points are up or down, or what the situation of them is as well. It's relatively low cost. It's licensed on the number of APs that are in use, but it does give you a very powerful solution for managing an enterprise environment. And we'd positively encourage this for anything over about 10 APs. I should stress, it isn't essential. The network will work without it, and if it goes offline, the network continues to work, so it shouldn't be viewed as an essential component. but it's certainly highly recommended if you're going to get above 10 or 20 APs and you want to have the ability to view and control those from a centralized platform. So to extend on that, towards the end of this year, we're coming out with a cloud management solution. There is admittedly a lot of demand in the industry for this. I imagine you've probably seen it with your customers. So the cloud management gives you the ability to have basically a cloud-hosted offering. Therefore, you don't need the on-premise equipment. From a management point of view, to deliver this, you still need on-premise access points, of course, but they'll be automatically set up and connected to the cloud, still giving the IT manager access to a management console to drive that. So similar user interface, simplified deployment model because the network administrator hasn't got to worry about deploying a management server or WAS server to do that. So you can drive down deployment times, still take advantage of the centralized management and give yourselves additional scalability as well. And it's architected to be a multi-tenant type solution as well. So coming soon, if customers are asking for this and demanding this, then you can be clear with them that we do have a solution coming. And like I say, cloud is a pretty hot topic around the industry in general right now, but certainly around wireless LAN deployment. So just moving on a little bit onto identity engines. So we find that network access control and wireless LAN very much go hand in hand. Most people don't deploy or shouldn't deploy a wireless LAN solution without giving some consideration to how they're going to manage access control to that and how they're going to enforce policy to it. So some of the problems that can be seen with deploying wireless LAN into a business environment are, how do you deal with what we call IT consumerization, the fact that users are going to start bringing their own devices and you haven't got control on what those devices are? How do you manage guest access? Most people that come into your office, I imagine, customers would want to have wireless LAN access. How can you effectively manage that? Most businesses are the same. They get demand for that and need to provide a solution for it. And this can be business guests. It can be short and long-term subcontractors. There's various different groups that need this. How can you enforce corporate policy? So there may be both corporately defined and industry-defined policies that need to be defined. PCI compliance is a very good example of this, where organizations need to deliver some demonstration of PCI compliance. But there may be other policies they need to enforce as well. They may be internally demanded by an internal security board, or they may be externally enforced, like I say. And how can you manage cost of change? How can you redeploy and equipment to make it work in an effective way? So the Avaya solution for this is Identity Engines, which gives us the ability to centrally control and enforce policy. It does it in a very industry standard way. So although we recommend it with Avaya equipment, you can use Identity Engines with third-party LAN switches and third-party wireless. Come to that. It's able to minimize the impact of adds, changes, and deletions. So if you want to automate connectivity and mobility within your environment, you can do that. We can use it to work with UC as well. So you can use it to effectively single sign-on Aura applications, which is a very strong capability to link our UC and wireless portfolios together. And there is a guest management solution within Identity Engines as well to give you a very strong story for managing guests. So relatively recent enhancements to this as well is we now include the base Identity Engines licenses with the wireless LAN orchestration system. So we give you a very simple way for a limited number of APs to get access to Identity Engines to control that, included basically as a single order line item when you take the WAS system as well. So a much simpler entry level to get Identity Engines running on your customers' networks as well. So I've already touched on the concept of this, but I'll just expand on it a little bit more, because for me this is a very strong Avaya proposition as well. So I've talked around wireless LAN, I've talked around Identity Engines, it's listed as IDE here. So with a end-to-end solution, which includes IDE, includes wireless, and includes Avaya wired products, we can build this Fabric Connect solution to basically extend the concept of virtual networks from the data center to the campus to the branch and across the whole estate. So what this might see us building is a corporate zone, a unified communication zone, a guest zone, and this could be wireless guest internet access. We can build a subcontractor zone. We can build various different zones across that environment, all logically or running across a single physical infrastructure, but logically isolated from each other. Therefore, they can have their own security policy applied. We can configure them not to be able to communicate with one another if required, or we can enable controlled access from one to another. We can automate the connectivity of users into those. We can extend these out into the wireless LAN space. We can make some of these PCI compliant if need be. So if you have a need to deliver a PCI compliant zone, you can build one of these and make it PCI compliant, and we've got a solution guide written already for that, to use identity engines to do that. But it does give us the ability to build this concept of virtualization end-to-end from wireless, wired, data center, campus. And that's one of the real significant benefits of combining a few elements of the Avaya portfolio: identity engines, the fabric story on the wired switches, and the wireless LAN products as well. So that kind of covers the benefits of the Avaya portfolio that I wanted to go through. Just touching on some case studies. I've got a couple I wanted to touch on quickly. So first of all, one from North America is an educational establishment that have taken our fabric story, our wireless LAN, and are running video surveillance over. This is actually a very interesting story, this, for me, because it basically came from an environment where we had to deliver a solution for video surveillance into a school. But in order to do that, a network refresh was required. The network refresh gave them the ability to roll out wireless LAN as well. It was tied in with them giving students iPads, something which I think is starting to move to Europe and to the UK as well. But basically we're able to take what was probably a relatively small project initially and upscale and grow it to include a number of different elements. And as I say, that was the wired infrastructure, the wireless LAN, and the network to support that video surveillance concept as well. So the key message around this one is that if you can find even what appears to be a relatively small opportunity, if you can work in the different elements of that story, find out what other business pressures the organisation is facing, what other investments they're working through, you can start to grow that out to be a kind of all-encompassing end-to-end solution for that customer as well. So I think this is why that's a particularly powerful story.
Dave, we had a question relating to the last slide there on the security zones. So why does the guest zone not go to the data center?
Oh, well, it could do. Yeah, it could do. So it depends where your internet breakout is. Guest traffic typically wouldn't use data center hosted applications, but it would probably use internet breakout and probably only use internet breakout. So it depends where that internet breakout is located. If that was in the data center, then yes, it would go there. If it was elsewhere, then it would only need to get to that point. But I suppose that there may be some science behind this in terms of you probably wouldn't have data center hosted applications being used for guests. However, if your internet breakout was there, then I'd imagine that you would. But it's more of a visualization than a detailed point-by-point configuration type illustration. But that's one of the beauties of the fabric, is that it's a very flexible architecture. If you wanted to extend it temporarily or permanently to one location, it's actually very easy to do. And as I said, I talked around fabric a few minutes ago, you can do that using edge-only provisioning as well. So you haven't got to reconfigure in the core. You can literally touch the edge and extend that service to that point, and the network will take care of everything else for you. So it's very flexible to build and assemble in that manner. So just kind of almost in closing on my section, one that I'm particularly close to be honest. So link at the bottom there for a press release from Glamorgan Cricket Club. We've just sold and delivered a network to them to support, actually not spectators, but to support their UC environment, to support their point of sale equipment, and significantly to support their press and media wireless LAN environment across the stadium. You can see in the illustration there. And the reason this investment was so important was because they had to roll out a new infrastructure for the Ashes, which is starting there a week on Wednesday. The 8th of July is the first day of the first Ashes test. We can proudly say that the press and media services, including photographers for that network, will be delivered across an Avaya environment, including wireless LAN and wired switching at that stadium there. It includes both indoor and outdoor access points. We've provided outdoor wireless LAN coverage in specific areas at the corners of the ground there and across in front of the pavilion to provide services directly to photographers to upload from their cameras or smart devices, whatever they choose to use. So it's a very comprehensive solution and one that we're quite excited about. So kind of watch this space, but you can proudly watch the ashes and think that an Avaya environment is supporting the press and media operation for that. I encourage you to take a look at the press release as well, because it's very positive around the experience that they had in rolling out the Avaya solution. So just kind of in summary around the Avaya portion of this. So a few things to bear in mind. The opportunity for wireless LAN absolutely is now, and the wireless LAN 9100 offer is particularly powerful and relevant. Network access is transforming. Dave made reference to this at the outset. Wired access is certainly for user traffic is flattening out. Wireless LAN is very much growing, so that's something that's worth investing in. Wireless LAN offer is certainly differentiated. I've talked you through what I see as the key points of our differentiation. There's some messages that you can sell on there, both for capability today and also a very strong future-proofing story. If you want to expand on the wireless LAN proposition, then absolutely position the Avaya Fabric as well, as the two things go very much hand in hand and complement each other, and it can enable you to both deliver a more competitive sales proposition and a bigger solution sale value as well. Something I didn't touch on, but I'll touch briefly on now, and please contact Westcon for more details on this. We have a promotion called Fabric Now, which gives promotional pricing on a series of products, including wireless LAN 9100 as well. So you can take advantage of that promotion to give yourselves a more competitive offer for wireless LAN as well. So that was the end of my slide. Can I hand back to you, Dave, to wrap up, and then we can take questions at the end?
Yeah, great. Thanks very much for that, Dave. Much appreciated. So really all I wanted to do was just to highlight a couple of more points around where to find out a little bit more about this. So there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight. One was come and see it in action. Come and see it at the Westcon Leap Centre in Crawley, where you can see all of our Avaya technologies, whether it's networking, video, or UC, working together, and certainly see some of the items that Dave mentioned around fabric attach and application control and the analytical part of the portfolio as well. So well worth coming to have a look at it. If you've got time, please come and visit us. And the other thing is if you don't have time to come down and see us, but you still want to find out more, then come and have a look at our Avaya portal. We call Activate Avaya.com, where you'll find a lot of additional resources around the whole Avaya portfolio, including downloads and blogs, and we'll just allow you to get a bit more familiar about in particular the Avaya wireless LAN portfolio. So finally, if you've got any questions that you don't want to raise today, then feel free to either email me. My name's Dave Garwood at dave.garwood@westcon.com, or contact our Westcon sales team, our Avaya sales team, which is avayasales@westcon.co.uk. So either way, please feel free to contact us to find out more. Thanks again, Dave. Thanks, Matt, for helping out today. And unless there's any other questions, let's have a look in there. Any other questions, Matt? No.
And I've come through. So unless anybody wants to speak up now, you can unmute yourselves or write in the chat window, and we take it from there. I don't think there's anything then.
No, thanks, gents. Thanks for helping out.
Yep, thanks everybody for attending.
Okay, thanks all. Appreciate your time.
Support. Right, take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The meeting is about to terminate.